Yeah, hi, welcome back. So in today's video, we will master Java Stream's grouping by functionality. It works just like SQL's group by, but inside your code. So let's go step by step, and let's start with what grouping by is. So grouping by basically is a collector, okay, used to group elements of a stream based on a classifier function. Okay, the classify function, for example, let's say you have a list of employees and you want to group them by the department id. Okay, for example, some of the employees may belong to hr and some may belong to finance and some may belong to an it, so you have to group them based on the department id. So basically it takes a stream of objects and returns a map. Okay, map where the key here is the grouping criteria. Say here we use the department name, so the key would be the department name, and the list would be the list of all the employees which are belonging to that group. So let us take an example for clarity. Let's say we have five employees here, like employee name, the department name, and the salary here. Okay, so each of the employees belongs to a different department. For example, Bob and David belongs to the same department, and Alice belongs to, and Charlie belongs to HR department, and E belongs to finance department. So let's say we want to group them by the department ID. So here's a classifier function can be based on the department. So all the employees which are belonging to the department would be grouped together. So based on this, we are expecting this and this as an output by a grouping by function. Okay. For example, the value here, the finance is the key, and we have a list of an employee. Here's a single employee. Whereas for the HR, we have two employees here, which are grouped together. Similarly for IT, Bob and David are actually grouped together. Okay. So this is the code which we are going to use. For example, the collectors.groupingBy will be used inside the collect method. And if you see here, this is the classifier function. Like we are telling that we need to group them by the department name. So we will be passing this classifier function, and on what basis we want to group them. On based on that, so if we based on that, we'll get this corresponding output. So this is how it works. So if you see here in this example, okay, we are returning the list of employees here. Okay, the key here is the department name, and since we are whatever is the stream on which we are iterating here. So for example, on that stream values would be returned in the list. In this case, we are returning the employees here. So let's say there is a scenario the we don't want to return the employees which are there in the stream. We just want to return the employee name. Okay, so in the below example, we have a list. Okay, for example, this, and let's say we just want to return the name of the employees, just like the below. For example, finance will have Eve and Charlie. We don't want the entire object in the list. We just want some attribute or a part of that object. So how do we achieve this? Okay, so we need something which is called as a collectors dot mapping method, which can be passed as a second argument to the collectors dot grouping by. Now, this collectors dot mapping function decides what to do inside the group. For example, let's say we have a grouping function here. Here we are having the classifier function, and this is also called as a downstream collector. So collectors dot mapping, again we will specify, okay, what attribute we want of that specific object, and we want to collect that attribute in a list. So if you see here, instead of list employee here, what we are getting here is a list of string. So in some scenarios we need not the entire object, we just need some part of that specific object. This is by using collectors dot mapping we can do that. Okay, we'll see this example in the code. Okay, there is one more use case wherein we don't want the entire object to be returned. We just want the number of objects which are satisfying that specific criteria. So okay, for that purpose, what we can do here is, so instead of collectors dot mapping, we can use here collectors dot counting. So what it will do is, based on this classifier function based on the department id, so here it will return a long. So key will be the finance, and long would return the number of objects which are satisfying that specific criteria. So here in the number of employees in HR were 2, number of employees in IT were 2, and number of employees in finance are 1. So second arguments here would be collectors dot counting. So let's take one more example. Okay, let's say we want to find out the average salary of the employees in a specific group. For example, here uh, the salaries which so based on the classifier function, department function, we find out the list of employees which satisfies that criteria, and for those employees, what is an average salary. So here, what we can do is, again, we specify the classifier function as the first argument, and the second argument here would be the averaging function which you want to put, which you want to apply to that specific attribute. So that attribute you specify as a salary. So we want to group them to find the average of their salary after grouping them by the department name. So here we can use collectors dot averaging double get on salary. So if you see here, the key again, the map, it is returned as a string, and double is the salary, and double is the value which you have calculated. So if we see here on each of the department, we get the average salary belonging to all those employees. So let's write some code for it. Okay, so here we have created an employee class with the same name, department, and the salary here. And I have a constructor here which will take all these parameters. And these are normal getter setters. And I have written two string method for name and salary. So I have created a similar list of employees which we saw in the slide. Okay. And when we print that employees, this is how the output we get. Okay. All of them are having the corresponding salary and all the stuff. So let's say we want to group them by the department. So I have a function written already here to save some time. So, okay, the snippet here, if you see here, I'm grouping them by the department ID. So for that employees, we stream it and we collect those employees. For that, we mention what is the classifier function by using collectors.groupingBy, and here we specify the department name. Okay, so let us see what is the output for this. Okay, so if you see, this is the employee list and this is the grouping. So if you see the HR, we have two employees, Alice and Charlie, and for the IT, we have two employees, Bob and David, and finance having a single employee. So this we can do only for grouping by the department name, and returning the list of all the employees here. So this is the list. Since I have used a two-string method here, it is just returning the name and the salary. If you can see here, this way it is returning. Okay. So let's say now we want to group them just by the name, just as showed in the previous slide. Okay. So I can use this as an example here. So in this use case, if you can see the return type here is a string here. Okay, the return type here is a string, and the classifier function is a department name, and we are using collectors dot mapping, and here we are specifying what attribute we want here in the string. Okay, and we want to collect them in a list. Based on that, it is collecting that in a list. So it mention that mapping function here, and we're using a get name here. So let us say what is the output here. If you see here, now we are returning just a employee names, not the entire employee object. Okay, so this is how it works. So let us take one more example which we discussed, okay, based on the counting of the employees. Okay, so here, if you see again, we are grouping them by the department name, but now instead of employee, we just want to find the count which are satisfying that specific criteria. So we just take it in a long using collectors dot counting. So let me just print this output. If you see here, finance having, HR is having two, and IT is having two employees. Okay, let us take a last example here. Okay, so in this example, what we are doing here is, again, we are classifying them or grouping them by the department ID, but we want to find out the average salary of those which are satisfying the criteria. So based on the department ID, I'm specifying the criteria on which it has to average, that is a salary. And if you see the return type here, it is having a map of string and the value here is double. Okay, so let us run this. You see, we are just getting the average salary of each employee. I think that's it from my side. I hope this tutorial was very helpful to you.